Hey everyone, I hope that you all are doing well. Have some really exciting news to share with you all. This Sunday, May 17th at 9:45 a.m., we'll be having a combined middle school and high school Bible fellowship down here in the youth room. I'm really excited about this and looking forward to being with you all. Also, on Wednesday night, June 3rd, we will have our first time of youth group back together. So be looking for some more details about that night and all that we'll be doing and everything that will be going on. But I'm really looking forward to being back together. So with that being said, I'd like to hop into our lesson tonight. And tonight we're going to begin a new series, and that series is called The Dreamer, Joseph's Life of Faith. So we're going to take 4 weeks and study some things about Joseph and his life, see some things that we can learn there. Tonight, as we get started, I'd like to share 3 riddles with you. And as I share these 3 riddles with you, I want you to be thinking to yourself, what am I, or what is it that these riddles are describing? So riddle number 1. You call for me when you wish or roll. You're down on me, but I'm in the pot of gold. Don't ever doubt that I can be good, because you basically want me if you knock on wood. That's riddle number 1. Riddle number 2. You run out of me every time you push yours. Then riddle number 3. The cousin of chance, good fortune's best mate. I'm what everyone seeks when unsure of their fate. So did you guys figure it out? What these riddles are talking about? Well, the correct answer is luck. Well, what exactly is luck? Luck is good fortune, advantage, or success considered as the result of chance. Again, luck is good fortune, advantage, or success considered as the result of chance. And in our everyday language, we hear people talk about good luck all the time. Before a game, it's very common for opponents to come out and say, good luck. We talk about, hope that your luck doesn't run out. Hope that you have good luck as you take your test today, or things like that. And we even hear Christians use this terminology, and oftentimes it's not meant in a negative or bad way. But truly the biblical perspective we should have is that we serve a sovereign God, that things aren't simply left up to chance, but we serve a God who is sovereign. And that word sovereign, that big theological word, what does it mean? Well, it means someone who is exercising supreme authority or rule. And that is God. He exercises supreme authority or rule over everything. Every single thing that happens throughout human history, throughout the course of any day, God is sovereign over it. He's in complete control of it. Now, when someone chooses to do something wrong or to sin, God isn't making them sin. He's not telling them to sin, but He's taking the choices they make and He's using it. He still has control over everything that happens. So we're going to see in Genesis chapter 37 tonight. So if you want to take your Bible and open up to the book of Genesis in chapter 37, we're going to see there some things we can learn about Joseph and the story of his life. And there are those who would like to look at Joseph's life and say, you know what, that's just a story of good luck. He just kind of happened to be in the right place at the right time. He just kind of fell into lucky circumstances. But nothing could be further from the truth. Joseph's life was controlled by the one true sovereign God, who was exercising supreme authority and rule over his life in all the circumstances surrounding him. So as we do this, I'd like to just give a real quick overview of the book of Genesis. Well, Genesis means beginnings. And in the book of Genesis, we see the beginning of the world, the creation of the world. We see the creation of the first man and woman, Adam and Eve. Woodham, that's funny. All right. We see that God formed the nation of Israel, that He gave Abraham the promise that He would bless all the nations of the earth through him. We see that everything that happens throughout the book of Genesis isn't left to just blind luck, to chance, but instead it is controlled by the one true sovereign God. And so as we come here to the book of Genesis in chapter 37, It's important to note that God's name is not mentioned once in this chapter, but even though his name is not directly mentioned, God's handprints, his control over everything that's happening in Joseph's life is absolutely, positively evident. So we're going to see here 4 signs of trouble in Jacob's family. All right, the first sign of trouble that we're going to see is that in Genesis chapter 37 and verse 2, that Joseph was a tattletale. In that verse, we see that this is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report about them. All right, so here you have Joseph. He's the youngest brother. And he, as we're going to see, he's kind of the favorite. So he comes out, to check on his brothers as they're taking care of the sheep. And the Bible doesn't tell us exactly what they were doing, but no doubt they were doing something wrong, something they shouldn't have been doing. So what does Joseph do? The little baby of the family, he runs back and he tells mom and dad. He gives a bad report about his brothers. And they're busted. Now, I don't know about you, but I was the oldest of my siblings. And when my little brother or sister tattletaled on me, I was going to be sure that they were going to pay for tattletaling. So we don't know exactly all the circumstances surrounding this. We don't know if Joseph was right in telling this or if he was just being a little spoiled youngest brother. We don't know the exact circumstances. But nevertheless, he goes back and he tattletales on his brothers that they've done something wrong. So that's the first sign. The second sign of trouble in this family is that Jacob, the father, played favorites. And we see this in Genesis chapter 37, verses 3 and 4. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. In case you guys haven't figured this out, parents, mom and dads, should not show favoritism to their siblings. It creates all kinds of feelings of hatred and jealousy and envy between siblings, and it's not a healthy thing. To illustrate this, let's play a quick little game. Now, if I were to say Nike or Asics, I'd pick Asics because I prefer those kinds of shoes. All right, so I'm going to shout out some other things. I want you to shout out what the correct or the answer you would prefer between these two things. All right, first is Skittles or M&Ms. I don't know about you, but I prefer Skittles. Next thing is fall or spring. Which would you prefer? I'm going with fall because that means football. Pasta or seafood? I just say combine the pasta and the seafood, but if I have to pick between the two, I'm definitely going seafood. Under Armour or Nike? Doesn't matter to me too much, so I'll just say Nike. The country or the city? I definitely prefer the country. Would I prefer to be at home or at school? I would definitely prefer to be at home. Now let's change the category here, all right? Don't answer these out loud, just think to yourself. Which is your favorite? Dad or mom? Grandma or grandpa? Sister or brother? Now as you ask you these questions, hopefully you're getting a good chuckle out of it, you're laughing, but there should be something inside of us that says, you know what, I can't choose between my mom and my dad or my grandmother and my grandfather, my brother and my sister. I love them both. Your relationship with them may be different. You may do different things with them. You may enjoy different things with them. But the fact of the matter is that you shouldn't have favoritism between your family. You should love one another unconditionally. Showing favoritism should be out of bounds between family members. There should be no desire of favoritism there. But here in the family of Jacob, we see that he shows favoritism to his son Joseph. No doubt that ticked off his brothers and made them upset. So this brings us to the third sign of trouble in Jacob's family. The third sign of trouble is that Joseph announced his superiority to the family. And we see this here in Genesis 37, verses 5 through 11. It says, Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to the dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. All right, so no doubt that this situation causes some serious tension in this family. So Joseph has a dream about the sheaves bowing down and worshiping him. And the one sheaf that's standing up and the ones that are bowing down represent him and his brothers bowing down to him. No doubt his brothers are like, there's no way we're bowing down to you, little brother. You're the baby. You're going to bow down to us. And then he has a second dream, and he goes to his family and he tells them about it. And we see the details of this dream in verse 9. He says, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. So his father, his mother, his 11 brothers bow down to him. His mom and his dad and his brothers understood what he was getting at with this dream, and they're all ticked. They're mad. They're like, there's no way. His dad even speaks up and says, do you really think that your mother and I and your brothers are going to get on the ground and bow down to you? And of course, this just fills his brothers with jealousy and envy and hatred. And the fourth and final sign of trouble that we see here in Jacob's family is that the older brothers did not confront the sin in their own hearts. And we see this back in verses we've already read. In verses 4, 5, 8, and 11. And in these verses it says this. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream when he told it to his brothers. They hated him all the more. Then down in verse 8, his brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. And then in verse 11, his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. 3 times we see here that Joseph's brothers hated him. And then the 4th time we see that they are jealous of him. You see, Joseph's brothers had some heart issues going on. Whether Joseph should have said and done some of the things that he said and did here in this chapter, it's hard for us to completely understand the context. There's not a lot of details. Maybe Joseph should or should not have done that, but his brothers should not have responded with hatred and jealousy. And guys, these are sins that can be going on in our hearts, in our lives, and cause a lot of destruction in our relationship with God and with others. Jesus talks about the importance of dealing with sins that go on in our hearts because people can't necessarily see hatred in your heart for another person. We can kind of cover that up. We can be nice to them and kind of put up with them when we're out in public, but in the whole time in our hearts and our minds just have an attitude of hatred towards that person. There are others who we can have feelings of jealousy and envy towards, and we may not say it or vocalize it or even show it in ways that others can see. But if we have those feelings and those thoughts and emotions in our heart towards others, then we have sin in our heart. And in Matthew 15:18, Jesus says this, but the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart, and these defile them. So when we have these heart issues going on, that shows the sin in our heart, and we need to deal with the sin in our heart. The brother's heart sins of jealousy and hatred would eventually lead to Joseph's betrayal. So if we don't look at their example and deal with the sin in our life, guess what? Hatred and jealousy, other sins there are sins that go on in our heart that people can't necessarily see, that we can cover up to a degree. If we don't deal with those sins, it'll destroy our relationship between us and others. It'll destroy our relationship between us and the Lord. We have to take care of the sin in our heart. So all this is happening and all this is going on. And so one day Joseph sends Jacob sends Joseph back to his brothers to check on them near the city of Dothan, which was a long way away, about 100 miles. Well, as Joseph is coming up to his brothers and his brothers see him coming a long way off, they start planning and plotting. And they decided that they were going to kill their brother Joseph because they were so jealous and had so much hatred towards him. They were going to kill him. But Reuben, the oldest brother, convinced them to just throw him into an old dry well, into a cistern. And he was hopeful that he could get him out of there and save his life and send him back to mom and dad. So he convinces them to take Joseph and throw him in this old dry well into this cistern. They take his special coat, that ornate robe that his father had made him that distinguished him from his brothers. And they take it, they douse it in blood, they shred it up, they make it look like a wild animal has killed their brother Joseph. And they go and they take that back to their brother, or to their dad, and they say Joseph was killed. But meanwhile, what really happened is that they sold their brother Joseph to the Midianites. And the Midianites took him and they sold him into slavery in Egypt. Man, that's just a complete mess. This family is in shambles, and every single person in that family contributed to the dysfunction and the trouble going on. But in the midst of all this, guys, it's very important that we stop and we take a step back and we realize, you know what? That even though Joseph and Jacob and his brothers had done all these things and they all bore some of the fault, that God was taking all their sinful choices, all the mistakes they were making, and he was using that for his plan, for his honor, and for his glory. And so as all this happens, and as Joseph's taken by his brothers, he's betrayed by them, he's physically, emotionally, spiritually just hurt by what has happened to him. No doubt he's scared, he's fearful, he doesn't know what the future holds. We see that there's 3 traps that Joseph avoided at this time in his life. First thing, he did not blame God. Throughout this chapter, and then this story picks back up in Genesis 39, we never see any indication that Joseph ever sticks his finger in the face of God and says, God, why did you allow this to happen to me? You made this happen. Why did you do this to me? There's no evidence of this. Instead, Joseph's life echoes this truth, that God is so great that he could trust him and wait. Somehow he knew that God was working it all out for Joseph's good and God's glory, and he never blamed God. And guys, that's hard to do because I can remember times in my life where I've gone through deep trials and times of heartache where I have questioned God. I've gone to God and I've said, God, you did this to me. Why did you allow this to happen? After all, God, I'm just trying to serve you. But you allowed this to happen, and I placed the blame on him. The second thing we see here is that Joseph did not fall into the trap of depression. I can't imagine what that's like to be betrayed by your brothers, to be sent to a place that you've never been before, far, far away from your home, from mom, from dad. He's 17 years old, mind you. And now he's out on his own and he is a slave. And he ends up in the house of Potiphar. And we'll look more at that next week. But as he gets to Potiphar's house, we see that he begins to serve, and he serves to the best of his ability. And Potiphar recognizes his ability and that God's hand is on him, and he elevates him to where he is his right-hand man. And so we see that Joseph didn't mope around, he didn't stay depressed, but he served the Lord the best he could in the circumstances in which he was. He did not become depressed and downtrodden. So I think about us when we go through times where we face really hard circumstances, just heart-wrenching circumstances in our life. How can we keep from becoming depressed? There are 2 verses I want to share with you guys. First, 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18. It says, rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. That's God's will for us, guys. That we rejoice always, pray continually, and give thanks in every single circumstance. And guys, this is hard. It's hard for us to do, to comprehend, and to understand when we are going through those things. But in the midst of any circumstance we face, this is the attitude that we need to have. And then in James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4, it says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. As we face trials, we should consider it pure joy because God is testing our faith. He's trying our faith, and He's helping us to learn how to persevere in the midst of difficulties and hardships in our life. So these are some ways that you and I can deal with those hardships, those circumstances that come up, and not allow our lives to be ruled by a sense of depression. And the third thing we see that that Joseph fought is that he fought fear and worry. And throughout everything that happens here, we never see David ask, will I ever see my dad again? What's going to happen to me? What does my future hold? We don't see him just thinking about everything and just becoming overwhelmed and controlled by anxiety and fear and worry. Instead, he rests in God and he pushes ahead. He keeps serving the Lord in the midst of these circumstances. I can't imagine what that was like as he was captured or taken by the Midianites and sold into slavery in Egypt, and his first days and weeks and months there in Potiphar's house, what he was thinking, what he was feeling, and yet he didn't allow worry and fear and anxiety to control him. I think he lived by the truth, the principle we can find in Psalm 37 and verse 7. It says, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes." In the midst of all the wicked schemes of Joseph's brothers, he chose to be still before the Lord and to wait for the Lord to work and act on his behalf. And guys, we have to do the same thing in the midst of trials and hardships and these difficult circumstances that enter our life. Another way in which we can fight this battle against fear and worry is we can turn to this principle, this truth in Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. Paul says here to the Philippian believers, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Guys, when we feel those emotions, those feelings of worry and fear and anxiety beginning to overtake us, we need to go to God in prayer. We need to go to Him and lay our burdens at His feet. We need to be reminded that He is sovereign, that He is in control, and we can trust Him. So guys, tonight as we begin to wrap this up, are there situations in your life, circumstances in your life that have taken twists and turns that you didn't expect, and you've just been left wondering, why did God allow this to happen? What's the purpose of this? What's the meaning of all of this? Well, guys, when those hardships, those heart-wrenching circumstances come into our life, we can trust God. We can trust Him. We can wait upon Him. Granted, this is a lot easier said than done, but it's a truth that we can go back to. Because, guys, our lives are not run by luck. But even in the midst of difficulties and hardships in life, God is working it all together in His plan for your good and for His glory. I think about some of you guys, and I think about a lot of you that are out there seeking to live for Jesus Christ. I can see it in your life that you want to live for Him. You want to please Him. You want to do what's right. And seeking to live as a committed Christian, sometimes it leaves you feeling a little lonely and feeling a little excluded from the crowd and like you don't have any good, close friends. Guys, I know that's hard. I know that's difficult. But even in the midst of that loneliness and those feelings of being alone and discouraged, God has a plan, and you can rest in Him. You can wait upon Him. And you can realize that God is using those circumstances in your life for His honor and for His glory. Some of you have probably just come through some really hard trials in your life. And you can look back and you say, "God, thank you for bringing me through those trials. And thank you for what you have taught me in the midst of these trials." And some of you probably know of friends right now that are struggling with different trials and hard circumstances in their life. will you pray for them? Will you let them know that, hey, I'm here for you. If you ever need to talk, I'm here for you and I'm praying for you and I love you very much. Because it's very important for us to do this because as Galatians 6:2 tells us, carry each other's burdens and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. We're to bear one another's burdens and to encourage and help one another carry on. I was reading a statement and studying for this lesson. It says, we all get surprised by many hurts throughout our lives, but we do not need to understand why God is allowing us to experience hurts and struggles in order to trust Him. But do we need to understand why God is allowing us to experience hurts and struggles in order to trust Him? And their answer is no. We don't have to understand why God is allowing us to experience those things. And I kind of only half agree with this statement. The fact of the matter is, guys, many of you have been through trials, and if you haven't been through some hard, deep trials in your life, you're going to face those in your life. And the fact of the matter is, we don't understand all the details of it and exactly why God allows us to go through that and experience that. But the fact of the matter is that we see in God's Word that there are reasons for that. And one of those reasons is found in Romans 8:28. Where we are told, and we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Guys, if we love God, if we're seeking to live for Him, everything, all circumstances in our life, God is working it for your good and for His glory. Make no doubt about it. It may be hard for us to see that and to understand that, but God is using every circumstance for your good. He's making you be more like Jesus Christ. He's teaching you how to depend on Him and grow in your faith and to grow in your walk with Jesus Christ as you go through difficult times. It is not pointless. But there is truth in that because we will never understand all the reasons for every hardship and trial that we face. So guys, tonight, I encourage you, if you're going through a time of hardship in your life, pray to God. Pray a prayer of commitment to Him that God, even in the midst of the hardships and difficulties of my life, I'm going to trust You. I'm going to look to You. I'm going to depend upon the truth of Your Word and follow the example of Joseph. So tonight, as we wrap all this up, I encourage you, if you're going through a trial or maybe you need to kind of just tuck this away one day for a time when you will face a trial, I encourage you to remember a couple of verses that we talked about tonight, to take these verses and commit them to memory. And as you're going through a hard time in your life, a trial, each morning get up and read these verses, memorize them, and quote them to yourself throughout the day when you go through trials. The first one is Psalm 37 and verse 7. It says, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes." Guys, we have to be still before the Lord. Just wait on Him and trust in Him. Even though we can't see all the details at that moment, we can know that He's working all things together for our good. And that's the second verse, Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Guys, I don't know where each one of you are at in your life right now. You're probably either in a trial, coming out of a trial, or getting ready to go into one. I know that many of you right now, as we've been going through this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, maybe there's just been feelings of anxiety and worry, and it's caused a lot of things to change in your life, and you're experiencing some hardships, some trials in your life right now as a result of that. Guys, trust in the Lord. Allow this to be a time where you grow in your walk with Him, in which He draws you close to Him, and you look to Him and Him alone for the help and the strength you need. Guys, I just want you to know that I love you, that I'm praying for you. And if you guys need anything, reach out to your small group leader, to myself, to Miss Sarah. We'd love to pray with you guys, to talk with you guys. And guys, don't forget to go to your parents. They love you and care for you very much and are people that God has placed in your life to help you along as you grow and learn and face hardships and trials. So at this time, see you guys later, and we'll split up into our small groups. See ya.